All right, here we are. The super fun page is now getting close to liftoff. Okay, I would say that this is sort of the minimal example of Oauth in action. The videos to this point have been explaining the workflow, and I think it's relevant to watch the others and see how the exchanges go back and forth. And maybe once you see this one now, go back and you can see the exchanges taking place. It takes seeing Oauth a few times in action to actually understand how this process works. But we're at the point now where, given all of these guys together, you can get an Oauth server working in a node server, I think, from this information. So, to repeat, we started by creating an application. I called this guy Super Fun. I was auto-generated an ID and a secret. It was confidential, authorization code, and I instructed my authentication server where it should be sending people back to once they've authenticated. In my case, I'm calling this login worker. I took these parameters and I use them when I'm setting up my Oauth 2 object. I have an ION ID, a secret. I have also set up a cookie session. I could have used an express session. This is convenient for me, but I'm using a cookie session, and I'm using my favorite cookie session name, Snorkels. Encrypted using the highly secret some secret keys, and adding a second one that you should change. If you decrypt my cookie using these keys, you have figured out some secret information. What we're going to do, I've added a lot of intermediaries over here. We've got logout, looks like that over here, and we've got our secret worker again. What we're going to do is we're really going to get some user experience over here. Not so much in terms of visuals, but in terms of workflow. All right, so here we go. I'm going back to user PC Cosic. I get a page that asks the user to log in. I get this link. Where does this link come from? The link itself was generated by the Oauth 2 object. It was a string named authorization URI that was constructed by this method. This authorization URI string was passed to my unverified template under the key login link. My unverified template over here asks you to please log in here, and there's my login link. So I landed at rendering unverified when I first land at the page. The reason I land at unverified is because there is not a key named authenticated in rec.session. My session, managed by cookie session and embedded into the cookie named Snorkels, encrypted with the above super duper secrets, triggered false in this case. Okay, I was not authenticated, but notice this is check authentication. How are we here? How is this getting called? This is again sort of basic express stuff. The user landed at app.get. They landed at my default landing page. Here is my method chain. The first method was check authentication. When check authentication came through, authenticated was not in there, so we tripped out to here and we rendered this page. Which is to say, we did not even go into get username, and we did not go into the final get a final anonymous function down here. This stuff just did not trigger. We made it only as far as check authentication, and because I called render, the show is over. When the show was over, so to speak, the show is over with this link over here. And the link has my client ID, and it describes the scope, and it tells where the user is actually going to be redirected to, back, user TJ PC Cosic login worker. So all of this information is embedded inside of this link. This is horrible to look at and should be embedded into something cleaner and nicer looking. And maybe, yeah. But we're going to click on this, and we're going to go to ION. click on this, right? If you're logged in to Ion like I am right now, or whatever your server, you will get this prompt where it's asking for permissions, whatever way, shape, or form. If you're not, you will be asked to log in. And once you log in, you'll go to this point over here. Super fun, right? Super fun. This guy who we set up over here, this is super fun. Super fun is looking for permission. He is looking to read my information. And remember, this is what you're doing when you're giving OAuth. You're giving either read or write permissions. When you click login with Google, you should look at the permissions that you're giving. When you click login with Twitter, you should look at the permissions. When you click login with Facebook, you should look at the permissions. This is how the whole Cambridge Analytica thing went down. People were clicking login with Facebook, and they were granting permissions, and these servers were acting as the individual. So you need to, like in this case, it's both me and me, but the person who's clicking authorize right here could very well be you or anybody. And as soon as they click authorize, my server now has their information. My server says hello Paul. And if Jim Smith logged in, my server would say hello Jim Smith. My server would have the ability to gain Jim's name. If, Ahmad or whomever logs in, we're going to say hello, Ahmad. We're going to say hello, Malcolm. Your name is going to be there. My server knows your name. My server knows your information. My server tells you that you've successfully logged into the Superfun page. Let's do this again. Let's go over here. I'm just going to kill off my cookies for a moment. So I'm going to delete Mr. Snorkels. And, sorry, Snorkels. I log in, I authorized, and noticed I got sent back to something that looks like PC Cosec. But we've been saying over here that you're getting sent back to login worker. So presumably, after the user clicked unverified, and they went off to Ion, and they came back, presumably they were sent to login worker. And the answer is yes, they actually were. The user got sent back to login worker, and they got sent back with a code. And the previous videos were showing that code and showing how that code gets passed and packaged together with my application's secret. And after the user has verified himself, my application verifies himself. And it sends this information off to Ion. And once both my application and your application, not in that order, the order is you the user, and my application have verified themselves, I get a token back. I get a server response token off of this thing. Inside of that token is a big object with lots of keys. And you should look at it like I did in the previous videos to see all the stuff that's inside of there. I take that token and I attach it to a local variable that's going to get passed down this middleware chain. And when I call next and I move out of convert to token into my anonymous function over here, I attach that token to my session. Remember, session is the express session, in this case being managed in a cookie, all packaged together into the cookie. And that token contains information about the user. And it also says that they're authenticated. rec.session is going to persist within the cookie. So as long as my cookie is set right here, whenever the user logs onto this page again, until that cookie is deleted, this session is going to be part of this information. And we can track that user's experience. And I redirect the user back to PC Cosec. So without ever seeing this login worker page, all this code is running, and they're getting redirected back to PC Cosec. When the user bounces back to PC Cosec, in this case, my home page over here, the first thing we do is check authentication. Previously, check authentication had, or previously being like when the cookie was not set, check authentication could not find a key named authenticated, right? So this is how you check for keys in objects. It could not find a key named authenticated in the rec.session object. And so, because this authenticated question returned false, we just rendered the unverified page with that link. But if authenticated is inside of there. We can call next, which is to say move from check authentication down to the next function in this chain, get username. Get username. So right now I dip into the rec.session object. So I dip into our session and I ask for the token and I ask for the access token. If you're unclear about where these objects reside, I encourage you to go back and look at some of the previous videos and see where this stuff fits together. Remember rec.session.token was assigned, rec.session.token was assigned in our login worker. So if we quietly made it through login worker, the token was assigned to this guy. And token has a subkey. Where am I? Token has a subkey named access token. In our previous example, we had this login link over here. You don't want the user to know that access token. You should not be broadcasting that access token at all. That is just patently bad form. But in my server, I can create a URL over here out of this access token, and I can query the user's profile. I'm going to use the express HTTPS GET package. And I'm going to go and take that URL, and using the mechanisms of this GET package, I make a web request, right? So this is how we make web requests on the server. The mechanisms of how this works is slightly beyond the scope of this video, but to be just basic about it, we define a callback function for what to do when when this data starts coming off of this URL, right? So I say get the URL defined here, and this is what we do when data starts arriving in. So the first thing we do is we define an empty string for raw data, and every time new chunks of raw data arrive, we're just going to concatenate them onto raw data, right? Every time a new chunk of data arrives, we tack it onto raw data, and then once all the data has been received, we can assume that raw data is full. I parse out raw data, and I create a profile object. This profile object is that giant JSON object that you get when you go to Ion API profile. And this could be any sort of authenticated request, but I parse the JSON, I parse the string, right? This is a string, we're gathering a string here, and JSON_parse converts the string into an object. And that object is now stored as res.locals.profile. I attach it to res.locals so that this can be handed off with next when we move out of get username by calling next and move into our final anonymous function. The res.locals.profile is there because I assigned it. This is just a local variable or local object that only exists for the duration of this particular request. And I just give it a temporary variable over here. I call it profile. And because this is now an object, because that string that we got from the request was converted into an object through the JSON.parse method and attached as an object, and then temporarily held as an object, I know that there's a key inside of here named first name. You can examine the structure of profile, and you can see that there are other keys inside of here. But that first name, profile.firstname, is my first name. And so now I'm going to render a verified user page. Verified, right? So I'm going to run the verified template over here. And now I'm saying hello user. And in my verified template, I'm looking for a key named user. Here is the object that I passed to my verified template. The key named user has a value named first name. And so this first name was teased out of a background web request. So the fact that this says, hello, Paul, wow, a lot happened. A lot happened here, right? So if I delete snorkels, and reload this page, the last thing I remember, I clicked over here, I clicked authorize, right? I'm going to click authorize. This is the last thing I do, boom. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing hello Paul. So the authorize happened, shortly after I clicked that login link. Let's think of all the stuff that just happened. After authorize, I got sent to login worker. I was passed a code. That code was converted to a token. That token was passed, and my ID, my application verified itself. I created a session keys named authenticated and token over here. I got the token. I redirected the user back to my default landing page. I checked to see that authentication was inside of there, and then I made a background web request that actually gathered their name, and then I said hello. Wow, that's a lot, okay? And this is the sort of seamless web experience that we're looking for over here. Hello, we just click a button that says hello, and all of a sudden all these mechanisms are running. It's like a clock, and we just take it for granted that seconds keep ticking a little bit, but there's a lot that makes that 1 second actually go forward over here. So we've got snorkels, sure. Something that we have also created inside of here, and this new is an app.get logout, rep.session.authenticated. Truthfully, this is not, not fully complete. I should also delete rec.session.token. So recall that the delete removes a key from an object. So I'm going to remove the authenticated key, and I'm going to remove the token key from rec.session. All right, so that's by going to log out over here. And when I click log out, as I delete these keys, I just quietly go back to PC Cosic like nothing happened over here. So let's take a look. I don't have a link to the logout page. This is on you to do that. But when I choose log out, all of a snorkels is still there. Okay, snorkels doesn't have as much data inside of him right now. When I restart right now, snorkels contains that token, so he's I didn't restart my server based on this. Let's restart the server, and so I can actually remove that key over here. Let's go to log out, and notice this time the session size, because my cookie is storing that entire session, he's going to be substantially smaller when I do this. Really? You kidding me? Oh, because I clicked login. Ha! Ah, there we go. Went down to 12. There's nothing there anymore. Okay. Our session data is basically empty. He's still managed by his signature, so the server can keep track of it. But yeah, log in, authorize, hello, whoever, and if you want to log out, you can click log out. So given this, you should be able to begin to start working with Oauth. You can change these endpoints around, but the key elements are something that manages the state. You're going to need some sort of session management so you can keep track of this, because remember, HTML is stateless. So we need to keep track of the state so that we know that they're logged in. You're going to need to register your server inside of your Oauth management. And you're going to need to make sure that your parameters are configured the right way. Once that happens, there's gas in the tank, and you should be good to go.